Here we go. Good morning, everybody. We've now concluded the seventh week of the legislative session for 2025. They are mowing through the bills. Crossover day was Tuesday, which is the last day in the session that bills can pass out of their house of origin. Um, in years past, there have been times where they had so many bills backed up that they had not acted on yet. The crossover day on one or both chambers has gone until 10 at night, 11 at night. They were pretty on top of things this year. And even though the House had a pretty long agenda, they got done by about 5:30 or 6 on Tuesday. The Senate had been done for about an hour, hour and a half before that. So all good. Lots of bills have been dying. I will not be surprised to hear that the percentage of bills passed this year goes down from where it was last year. There have been a lot of bills that have been withdrawn or tabled in various committees or on the floor. So the good news for TCSD is that we only have 3 bills left alive on which we've taken positions. So that means we can focus our advocacy on the remaining 3 bills, 2 of which we support, one of which we oppose. But I will talk about some other bills that have either passed, failed, or that we're neutral on and where they stand in the process. So let's just dive right in here. We are going to talk about Senate Bill 117, which was a bill that would have allowed RV dealerships to establish campgrounds at their premises. This bill, as you recall, weeks ago was defeated in committee, and it was taken off the table at the end of last week. And what that means is it was sent to the 41st day, but any committee can take a bill off the table for reconsideration. The good news was it was not taken off the table to become the same bill again. It was taken off the table to potentially become a landlord-tenant law from Senator Mike Roll. The bill was tabled again earlier this week. So that's dead for this year. Next, Senate Bill 144, which we were neutral on, requires legislative approval for significant capital expenditures by GF&P. That bill originally said any expenditure by GF&P of over $1 million has to receive legislative approval. That bill was controversial for that reason, but the GF&P struck a deal with the prime sponsors. The bill was amended. Now it says if a project of over $2.5 million, then it requires legislative approval. GF&P became neutral at that point, and the bill passed unanimously out of the Senate. The companion bill, Senate Bill 153, requiring the expenditures from GF&P, from the GF&P fund be budgeted through the general appropriation bill. That bill was tabled. So that is gone for this year. Just looking for any other easy ones. Oh yeah. Let's talk since this came up between our last call and this one. Very proud of the team effort to utterly destroy House Bill 1138 and House Bill 1191, the two bills to repeal the exemption for advertising for sales tax. TCSD, so I had 5 total clients that were opposed to this bill. The Greater Sioux Falls Chamber, TCSD, Mid-Continent Communications, Wall Drug, and I always forget, the newspapers. The broadcasters lobbyist led off the opposition testimony on House Bill 1138 in House State Affairs on Friday the 21st, a week ago. And then I went second. I was so focused that I forgot that at the beginning of the meeting, before the first bill, the chair had said, I'm going to limit time on every bill to 12 minutes per side. So Steve Willard for the broadcasters got up and probably took about 5 minutes. I got up and probably took another 5 minutes. And that left about 1.5 to 2 minutes for poor Rick Hustad for Wall Drug and anyone else to testify in opposition. This was all a deliberate effort on behalf of the chair, who believes that we should probably remove the exemption for advertising. And he knew there was only going to be essentially one proponent, which was Senator Taffy Howard from the Black Hills. who got up and in favor of the bill, mostly dumped all over special interest groups, lobbyists, saying that we were all going to come up in opposition and say, please don't slaughter our golden calf, but we've got to slaughter somebody's golden calf. And we all got up in opposition and said, this is not the golden calf you want to slaughter. It's a new tax. We've never taxed advertising. Anyway, the committee killed the bill 9-3, and then 1191 was tabled by its prime sponsor, Representative Carla Lemps. So I don't know if she had planned to table that going into the meeting, or if she saw the firestorm of opposition to the other one and decided she was going to table it. But that's dead for this year. I do think if HCR 6003 passes, that is a measure that will put in place a new task force to study property taxes, really all taxes. It's the third such task force in the last 5 years alone to study this. But if that passes, I think they will consider all the exemptions and decide whether and to what extent they're going to repeal any of those. 1186 was a bill that we didn't have a position on, but it would have, over a 5-year period, tapered down and ultimately taken away all funding for the governor's future fund. And I don't know if and to what extent, Wanda could probably answer it better than I could, if and to what extent any tourism-related businesses or projects have ever benefited from the future fund. I know that the Governor Noem, put about $14 million from the future fund into the Black Hills shooting range. That is arguably going to draw some tourists to the area. But regardless, the future fund is something that has allowed for a lot of economic development opportunities. The bill was defeated twice on the House floor on Tuesday afternoon, crossover day. Extensive debate, a lot of very contentious comments from multiple members of the House, but it ultimately died. So the business interest groups were very pleased that happened. House Bill 1188, we didn't have a position on. It allows non-resident military members to purchase 3-day temporary non-resident waterfowl licenses. This bill passed the House, was heard in the Senate Ag Committee yesterday or the day before. They couldn't get it killed. It tied 3-3. So they sent it to the floor without any recommendation, which is unusual. So the first step they have to do is on the floor vote on whether they're going to change the do not recommend with no recommend to do pass. That'll have to be first. Then they'll take a vote on the actual bill itself. Again, we didn't have a position on it. House, so let's see. HCR 6008 is encouraging Congress and the federal government to give South Dakota Amtrak passenger rail service. We supported that in both chambers. It is now, I believe it has to be voted on the Senate floor, but it passed out of the committee, the Senate Transportation Committee, unanimously. I think it has to be, okay. It was put on the consent calendar. Someone removed it from the consent calendar. Let's see who. I just want to know which senator it was who took it off the consent calendar. No surprise whatsoever. Senator Taffy Howard removed it from the consent calendar. So it'll be up for vote on the Senate floor Monday. I don't think it's going to have any problem. Once it passes the Senate floor, it's done. Resolutions don't go to the governor's desk. All right, moving on. Some great news this week. House Bill 1154 was the bill that would have changed the statute that says if a municipality owns a campground, they are not permitted to construct or expand that campground unless they get written approval from all private campground owners within 15 miles of city limits. This law has been on the books in its current form since 1990, and there's no reason to change it. But one city, Mitchell, says that it has had issues with wanting to delete some campsites, build some cabins, delete some tent sites, build some campsites, meaning RV campsites. So I spent Wednesday morning before the 10 a.m. Senate Local Government Committee meeting going around and talking to every one of the 7 members of the committee. The only one that I could not convince to vote our way was Kyle Shanefish. The others all opposed it. Helene Duhamel from the Black Hills likes campgrounds. And basically the argument that I think resonated was we're not going to change the rules that have been on the books to establish fairness and reasonable processes since 1990, just for one city that has had a problem. Mary and I both testified in opposition to that. Representative Bathke from Mitchell gave very little commentary in favor of his bill. I was frankly shocked. I don't know if he thought it was just easily going to pass out of there, or if he knew it was going to die and therefore he didn't want to put much energy into it. But regardless, the Municipal League made it clear to folks it was not their bill, but they were supportive, but they also did not lobby it. So, I think we had a definite advantage. I frankly expected Senator Miskimins from Mitchell to be there and testify in favor. I think that would have helped the bill in front of a group of senators, but it's dead. So we're going to, such a resounding defeat, 6-1, killing it in the Senate Local Government Committee. We're going to hope that kills it for the next couple of years, but more than likely that's not going to happen. A bill like it has come every year since 2022. I don't know if Mary, you have anything to add, but I think we did a good job on that one.
I don't have anything more to add other than I've taken notes to prepare for the next one. That's how optimistic we are that there will be a future one.
Let's talk about the 3 airport bills before we get into the most controversial of the measures that's still alive. We still have alive for airports, Senate Bill 132, Senate Bill 178, House Bill 1189. House Bill 1189 is where I'll start. That is the bill to extend by 2 years the deadline to spend the funds that were appropriated in 2020 for marketing of airports to bring new airlines and routes to South Dakota airports. That bill passed both chambers and is now waiting for signature on the governor's desk. It is the only one of the airport bills that was not opposed by the Roden administration. And so therefore, I don't anticipate any problems. I think the governor will sign it and we'll go forward. A lot of negative comments from the far right legislators like Taffy Howard, who believes that this is changing the way that appropriations bills have worked, that it is unfair that you appropriate for money for a certain period of time, and then you can extend it and whatnot. I think her comments were off base. I disagree with them, but it's on the governor's desk, and I think he'll sign it. Senate Bill 178 would raise the tax on jet fuel and aviation gasoline. It has passed the Senate, and it's with 7 dissenting votes. It's now waiting in the House for its first hearing, I believe. Yes, the House Taxation Committee will hear the bill on March 4, which is Tuesday. So contact your legislative members of the House Taxation Committee. It's going to have a harder time getting out of that committee. And keep in mind, this bill requires a 2/3 majority because it raises a tax. So it's going to be difficult to get it off the House floor. Senate Bill 132 was passed out by the Joint Appropriations Committee 14-4, but the bill was amended. It's no longer a $30 million appropriation. It's a $100 appropriation. And I don't think that $100 is going to do much good for building terminal expansion projects and other stuff. But it was done that way to keep it alive and get it out of the Joint Appropriations Committee. This is what we talked about several weeks ago. This bill, as a special appropriation, has to wait to see how much money is left and to figure out what the priorities are of the legislators to spend one-time money. Now, an update along those lines. As everyone knows, House Bill 1025 was killed and could not be resurrected. That is the bill to appropriate another approximately 140 something million dollars to building the prison in Lincoln, the new prison in Lincoln County. So the governor has announced he is not going to try to resurrect that bill by the end of the official legislative session. However, he's appointed a task force to study it, and then he's going to call a special session of the legislature in July to vote on where we go from here between, building the new prison, improving the old prison, what the options are, where it can be built, and so on and so on and so on. All of this is important because the legislators should not sit there and think, oh, we've now got an extra $140 million to play with to decide what we're going to do for one-time appropriations. There will be a special session in July to discuss where we go with the prison. So if they were smart or if they were careful, they would probably not just spend that money. Now, for those legislators who hate the idea of building a new prison or hate the idea of building it in Lincoln County, for those who want to stop the new prison concept, they're going to support spending that money. Because if there's not the money left over, the legislature in July, in cooperation with the governor, can't put that money toward the new prison. But we'll see what happens. We got 2 weeks left of the session, and there's a lot of discussions they have to do. So 132, we still support it. We're still hopeful that they will appropriate millions of dollars to the airport fund. We just don't know how much it's going to be. So that's the 3 airport bills. Are there any questions or comments on any of those? Okay, moving on. The last item, which it's the Legislative Committee just voted this week to oppose, is HCR 6010. This comes from Representative Scott Odenbach, who's in the Black Hills. He's also the majority leader of the House. This is a concurrent resolution that would direct the legislature's executive board to form a task force, right? Excuse me, interim legislative committee to study and evaluate the regulatory provisions applicable to government-sponsored economic development activities, mineral and mining extractive industries, and residential development taking place within the Black Hills of South Dakota, and to recommend appropriate regulatory provisions to protect the environmental health and historical character of the Black Hills. What does that mean? There's going to be if this passes, there will be an interim legislative committee that will study government economic development, residential development, and mineral and mining activities in the Black Hills, with an eye, if Odenbach is involved with that, with an eye toward basically shutting those down. Plain and simple. Representative Odenbach and some of his cohorts, Representative Hansen, Representative Soy, Senator Howard, are very opposed, very hostile toward economic development sponsored by state or local governments. If you're bored sometime, really bored, you can go back and listen to the House State Affairs Committee meeting on Friday morning, the 21st. You can hear all of the comments that were made about the economic development programs that have been used in the last 30, 40 years, like TIFs and the Large Project Development Fund, the Build Dakota Scholarship, all kinds of stuff. And you will hear them say, economic development sponsored by government is the government picking winners and losers. We think it's spending too much money. We think it's corporate welfare. We think it's unfair. We want to cut government. So right out of the gate, they're hostile toward government-sponsored economic development. So this interim committee, when put together, will be opposed to that. But this also goes back to what I talked about last year, which is I had a personal conversation face-to-face with Senator Taffy Howard in the airport here in Sioux Falls, where she told me I don't want more tourism in South Dakota. And I've talked to numerous constituents who tell me they don't want more tourism in South Dakota. We don't want more people moving to South Dakota. I want to go back to the sleepy little state we were in the 1950s. So the residential development component of HCR 6010 is designed to get at exactly that. Stop having more people move to South Dakota. We don't like it that Governor Kristi Noem was pushing and encouraging people to move to South Dakota. We want to keep our state no worse than it is now, and preferably we'd like to go backwards. So Greg Blanc, John Carley, Kathy Howard, Scott Odenbach, all people who have not lived in South Dakota all their lives. But now that they do, they want to stop other people from coming. So I'm just being blunt in all of this. They would probably disagree with me and they would say, no, it's what the measure says. It's about protecting the historic and environmental integrity of the Black Hills of South Dakota. No, it is predominantly about slowing down tourism, development, and new people moving to our state. So those are the reasons why TCSD is firmly opposed to this measure. It will be up for hearing before the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee on Tuesday morning. The members of the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee sorry. The chair is Tom Pischke, Vice Chair Kevin Jensen, Senators Sidney Davis, Helene Duhamel, Sam Marty, Michael Roll, Kurt Voigt. I can tell you right now, Tom Pischke, Kevin Jensen, Sam Marty, for sure, will all vote for this. So then, but I'm also confident that Sidney Davis, Helene Duhamel, and Mike Roll will vote against it. So the one person, in my opinion, that's most up for grabs is Senator Kurt Voigt, who is from Meade, Pennington County, and that does not bode well. Just going to be honest. So if anybody has any connection to Senator Kurt Voigt, I'd contact him. You might also have some luck with Senator Kevin Jensen from the Canton area. I don't think so, but I know Tom Pischke and Sam Marty are probably lost causes, but I would say contact all 7 members of the Senate Ag Committee. Any questions, comments on any of the items I've talked about up to this point, including HCR 6010? All right, are there any bills that I haven't talked about that anybody thinks we should talk about, or just general questions about the session, next steps, etc.?
You want to touch on the outfitter bill, 1215?
I thought we talked about that.
Did we already? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I think we talked about that during the last call because it had died before the last call.
Okay.
I apologize. I wasn't quick enough to get to a question on, this is Anne, HRC, is it 6010, the one we were just discussing. And what is the sentiment? I mean, I understand the bill and stuff, but what is the sentiment of residents in the Black Hill? Are these legislators actually hearing from residents that these are issues? Is it a very loud minority? Like, what is the genesis of this bill? Or this resolution?
Yeah, I'm across the state from the Black Hills, but my impression is that it is a very loud minority of people who live in the Black Hills. It is also being driven, and this is why Senator Pischke and Senator Marty and probably Senator Jensen would be inclined to support something like this. It is, again, a very vocal, loud minority of people across the state who hate anything that involves the expenditure of taxpayer or government dollars in favor of economic development. So, I mean, that's why in the resolution, they've specifically called out, quote, government-sponsored economic development activities. And I warned TCSD going into session after the primary election last year. I warned the Sioux Falls Chamber and many of my other clients. The group of legislators that is now in control of leadership in both chambers is openly and aggressively hostile toward any government-sponsored economic development activities. But getting back to the tourism issues, there is a loud minority of people who live in the Black Hills who hate tourism. They want the Black Hills for themselves, and they want to slow down or, ideally stop tourism-related activities and trying to encourage more of that in the Black Hills. Again, Taffy Howard also told me in the same conversation I had with her, she'd like to repeal the entire Department of Tourism, which I've shared with Wanda and Jim.
Yeah.
So
that's my concern is that, excuse me, I don't know where my voice went. Government sponsored economic development is, I don't know, 98% Department of Tourism in our book. And we're competing against all the other departments of tourism in the country to bring our guests here, our visitors here, to leave their money behind with us. And obviously the Department of Tourism has loads of money, loads of statistics on how much a spender saves a resident here in South Dakota. So definitely, if they're going to be studying their end of the bill all summer, I think we need to be doing the same thing on combating that future bill.
Yeah, and the unfortunate part about the group of people who's bringing this, Anne, is that they don't care. They don't care what these special interest groups have to say.
Yeah.
If you are a business or a business interest group, they will not listen to you.
Right.
And they will stand up before committee hearings and they will say exactly what Senator Taffy Howard did during the hearing on 1138. Oh, it's all just to try and save themselves, to try and protect their own wallets. They are adverse to our constituents and the people of South Dakota. So it's unfortunate. It used to be that if legislators heard this, the chambers of commerce, the retailers, the tourism coalition is opposed to something, they would say, oh, okay, well, then this is something we have to defeat. But HCR 6010 is the perfect example of that sentiment doesn't prevail anymore.
I appreciate that. And I'll go back and listen to the testimony of HB 38. I did listen to the HCR 6010 testimony. The first time it was heard, but I get the sense because of some of the economic development that's happening in our county. And this is just people talking to me, and we don't have tourism economic development. We have ag economic development, but it is state sponsored. And people are concerned about how it goes through the county level government, and there's not a lot of zoning, regulation, input, and those kinds of things where I know people just aren't paying attention as residents to the legal notices that go in the paper when this stuff is happening and what's going on really. But that's where I'm wondering about it. It's different in the Black Hills, and I get it, but it just bubbles up in all these different places where you start to see GOED funding come in for these large projects that we have going on. And so I don't think it's going away anywhere. And on the tourism side of it, of course I support it, but I also get here tourism and ag butt heads. I mean, I have specific examples that have gone down here in the last year where that funding has specifically threatened the tourism industry. And so that's where I'm starting to wonder, as this progresses further, how those conversations start to happen in our state. So that's why I was asking about it.
Other questions, comments, or bills that we need to talk about? Mayor, just to respond to what Carmen talked about, House Bill 1215 would have given a giant litany of rulemaking authority to GF&P to license and regulate outfitters, fishing guides, hunting guides, etc. Representative DeGroot brought this bill forward. He did propose an amendment to the bill, but it wouldn't have changed the reasons why we were opposed to it. It was extensively opposed by a long list of groups and organizations, including TCSD. The House Ag Committee just defeated the bill hard on February 18. Vote of 10-2 killed the bill. So great news. If we didn't talk about that last time, that's just kind of a quick summary. I did not get the impression from listening to Representative DeGroot that there is a giant groundswell in favor of this. The only organizations that testified in favor are the Isaac Walton League and Dakota Rural Action and some of these others, which we've been on the opposite side of those groups way more often than we've been on the same side. Unless there's anything else, I think we can end the meeting. We've got another one set for the morning of March 7. So we can talk more at that time.
And
But
I will
hopefully by
bring
that
my
point,
note.
all the rest of the stuff will be in a better position. In all honesty, I do not believe that the airport bill, at least 132, will be done. I don't think that will get finally decided on until the last week of session. But let's hope that, I mean, again, it takes 2/3 majority. So let's hope that 178 has passed the House floor by that point. Now, here's the problem. Governor Roden may well veto that bill. Given the makeup of the House floor, it's probably going to be a close vote whether 178 passes regardless. So when a governor vetoes a bill, even one requiring a 2/3 majority, you lose votes because people look at it and they say, well, the governor's not wrong about X, Y, and Z. So I'm nervous about a possible veto, and I'm nervous about the possibility that measure ultimately succeeds. But we'll keep our fingers crossed to keep working it.
Justin, what would the governor's reasoning be behind it, since it is kind of a user tax and such?
It's a tax increase.
Just because of that.
Yep.
Okay.
It's a tax increase, plain and simple. There's already in their mind sufficient money in the fund to cover the needs for the next, X number of years. And therefore we don't need to raise the money.
I think the word she used was adequate.
Yes, there's adequate money. I mean, there's clearly not adequate money to cover
Mhm.
terminal expansions at either Rapid or Sioux Falls, but that's their position. New tax, and there's already adequate money in the fund.
Okay, I'll get some stuff out on those three, since we're still dealing with three of them. So
Yeah, and I don't think, I do know the Economic Development Professionals Association, Elevate Rapid City, those two organizations for sure are opposed to HCR 6010. But if anybody's connected to any other organizations that want to start contacting legislators to go, oppose those, great. All right, if nothing else, I will stop recording and then we can continue with our days. Thanks,
thank you,
everyone.
Justin.